Arizona Democrats are changing directions while Republicans stay the course. We talk to the leader of the Arizona GOP. Can state leaders keep the Arizona Diamondbacks at Chase Field? We speak with one lawmaker who thinks he can.
I'll take it up to Legislative Council.
And if you make the laws, are you above the laws? Another state lawmaker tries to use his position to get out of a speeding ticket. Our panel weighs in now on Politics Unplugged.
Good evening. I'm political editor Dennis Welch, and this is Politics Unplugged. And after the November election, state Democrats decided they needed new leadership. But the Arizona GOP is pretty happy with the election results, so they chose to stay the course with party chief Gina Swoboda. And she joins us now with a look ahead for what is going to happen with the Republican Party. First of all, congratulations. You got another term. Why do you think that was? I mean, if you look at the overall results, you did well with the congressional elections, picked up seats in the legislature when many people thought, including myself, I thought the Democrats had a shot to take control of one of the chambers. That didn't happen. You expanded the majorities there. But once again, the big statewide race, Democrats, Ruben Gallego won in the U.S. Senate race. So what do you think the key was for keeping the job?
Thank you, Dennis. That's great to be with you. Mm-hmm. So I think that we enjoyed winning. Mm-hmm. I think that all the different groups within our party feel heard with me as the chair, and I'll keep that momentum going. And they gave me a shot to come back and do a full term, and I'm honored by the support.
Okay, and one of the things I do want to ask you about this, though, I'm looking at the registration advantages. And once again, we've seen, even since the beginning of the year, Republicans have expanded their advantage over Democrats in terms of just raw numbers of people who are registered with the party. I believe your party holds an advantage of over 300,000, maybe 314,000 more voters registered with the party over Democrats. In fact, I believe Democrats are third, even behind independents at this point.
They are.
So my question is, how come Republicans haven't been able to win the statewide races, the big statewide races? Again, lost the U.S. Senate race this year, 2 years ago, lost the governor's race, the attorney general's race, secretary of state's race. You guys have had, your party's had these registration advantages. You guys have, again, picked up seats in the legislature. How come Republicans can't win these big statewide races?
Thank you. I think that's an excellent question. So I think in the election we just had, we demonstrated that we can. We took the entire Corporation Commission. Mm-hmm. I second your emotion on the Senate seat. We are infamous ticket splitters here in Arizona, right? Going back to Napolitano and McCain, Ducey and Sinema, and that happened in another cycle. I think our people like to put checks and balances in place. I think that's a huge thing. So if the person at the top of the ticket, you're putting in someone of one party, sometimes voters will go down to the next line and either leave it blank or vote for the opposite party. It's just a phenomenon that Americans in general do, and especially in Arizona. But I do have great hopes that we've demonstrated in this cycle that if we take, we have a big, beautiful tent, and we have people of varying beliefs within our party, and if we continue to address the issues that the voters are actually talking to us about and not try to fight with each other where we don't agree, then I think we can stay unified long enough to get over the line. And we're going to have to see who are our voters in the primary going to choose. And when they come out, I'm going to support whoever that is. Our party needs to stay neutral. And I think, Dennis, a big part of the problem that we had in previous cycles with winning statewide races was that the Republican Party was perceived as putting their thumb on the scale and picking a candidate in a primary. And if you do that and you attack your own team during the primary, it's much harder for us to come together. We talk a lot about how our primary is relatively late in the cycle, right? And so there's a limited time for us to come together because we start voting so early. So my job is to stay neutral, kind of hit the Democrats as hard as I can, right? And then when the voters tell me who they want, then I'm just going to amp it up.
Well, let me ask you, can a MAGA candidate, a strong supporter of Donald Trump, win a statewide race here in Arizona? Because one of the things all those candidates had in common that didn't win those races were they were all big Trump supporters. And for whatever reason, I mean, and they lost those races. I mean, Carrie Lake lost the governor and the Senate race. Abe Hamadeh lost 2 years ago for attorney general. We've seen this for the past several cycles. So let me ask you, do you think it's possible for a MAGA candidate to win statewide?
I do. I think President Trump just won statewide as the ultimate MAGA candidate. He's the
but
OG
he's almost
MAGA.
different, though. He almost defies all the political laws.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I think they can if they address, and we talk about, the Maslowian hierarchy of voting needs. You can be red, white, and blue MAGA through and through, but if you're not talking to the voters about what they want to talk about, you're going right by them. So it can't be, I am this populist person, but I don't have policy solutions for you and what you want me to do in the office that you're asking me to put you in, right? That's what I think the difference is. So this election is going to decide that because, right, we're going to have low propensity voters aren't going to come out. I hope they will. I will try to get them all out, but without President Trump on the ticket, turnout is likely to drop. It always drops in a midterm. Yeah. So if, to your point, the winners of our primary are populists, I do think that's the zeitgeist of the country right now, but that's not enough. You have to do that, and you have to talk about the issues voters care about. That's how you win.
Are you saying that the previous candidates that were big America First candidates, they weren't addressing the issues that the voters wanted to hear, or was there another reason that those candidates couldn't get over the finish line?
The voters thought so. Right? I mean, the voters chose who they picked in those races, and they did not pick some of those candidates. I think the AG's race is not something I would put in that bucket. We got down to 280 votes at the end, and, you know, we had an issue with provisional ballots and the rules of how we do cross-county voter registration in the state. So I think that race was the closest race that we've had in a very long time. So Mr. Hamadeh, who's now Congressman Hamadeh, was as MAGA as they come, and he virtually tied in that race. So the voters of Arizona were okay with that. I think sometimes we get caught up in the crossfire and the drama, and we forget that at the end of the day, you as a candidate are selling a product, and the product is, can you deliver for the voters? You have to talk to everybody.
And let's wrap up with this, because obviously you may disagree with me. I think your number one job now is to win the governor's race in a couple of years.
I concur.
So how do you see that race playing out? And are you worried? It looks like, you know, Congressman Andy Biggs, well-known political commodity here in the state, has said, expressed his interest. He wants to run for that position. By all intents and purposes, it looks like Karen Taylor Robeson, who attempted to run and came up short in the primary for governor a couple of years ago, she's probably going to run again. Are you at all concerned? And I know you expressed neutrality in this, but are you at all concerned that a nasty primary between those two hurts the party moving into the general election, where you're going to be trying to take down an incumbent, and regardless of whether you see Hobbs as vulnerable or not, to take out an incumbent is always a big challenge.
It is. You're right. And the primaries are designed for us to fight with each other, and that's what we're going to do. And I actually do think that what Governor Hobbs does in the next window of time is going to determine how hard or how easy it is for us to come out of a heavy fight in our primary, which I expect because we're passionate. We don't go along to get along. No Republican owes their vote to any candidate who runs with an R at the end of their name. They have to earn that vote, and they have to go into the base and talk to our voters if you want to win a primary. Ranked choice voting failed, I'm very glad to say. So the only way you're winning is if you go and talk to our base. But for example, Governor Hobbs is going to have a very important election bill on her desk that's supported by the counties that the voters have asked us over and over again, do something to speed up results. Not lose accuracy, but help us get to a place where we're not waiting for 2 weeks. No. If Governor Hobbs chooses to ignore what the county election officials and recorders are asking for, what the voters are asking for, what the majority, which is expanded because the voters trusted the Republican Party, and she vetoes that bill and she continues to veto bills, then I think she's going to have a really tough road to hoe.
All right, we'll have to end it right there. Thanks for stopping by here.
Thank you.
Up, still ahead, can the state legislature keep the Arizona Diamondbacks in downtown Phoenix? One lawmaker believes so. You'll hear from him when Politics Unplugged continues. Well, welcome back to Politics Unplugged. Maricopa County leaders have been negotiating with the Arizona Diamondbacks, looking for a deal to keep the team in Chase Field. But could the solution lie in the state legislature? State Representative Jeff Weniger believes so, and he's here to talk about that and talk about the bill you just filed. Thank you for being here, and let's get into some of the details of that bill. My understanding is it allows the team to keep some sales tax and income tax to help fund repairs for the stadium, which is basically what the whole tension between the county and the ball team is right now.
Yeah, I think it's important to note to people that this is a public asset. So this decision was made 30 years ago or more by the County Board of Supervisors. Now it's a publicly owned asset. So the question is, how do we make sure it stays in good repair and at the same time keep our world champion Diamondbacks here? So to make it easy to understand, it's everything within the envelope of the stadium. So nothing, not restaurants down the street, not rental car taxes and that kind of thing. The envelope of the stadium, the sales tax and the income tax would be released to the county to go to improvements, infrastructure, and upgrades to the stadium over this next life cycle. Because a life cycle of a stadium is about 30 years. Yeah. And we're bumping up against that now from that decision that was made years ago.
So what about gaming? I mean, there's a gaming, I believe there's gaming on site there. What about the revenue generated from that? Is the team able to keep that as well?
It might be in the envelope of that, but it's just, again, the taxes on that stuff. The team's probably making money on the gaming license anyway that TJ Shope and I ran a few years ago. And but anything outside of the stadium, it would not. And that includes, ancillary parcels that are on part of that stadium district would not count.
Well, let me ask, what happens, is this money, is it guaranteed, does it have to be spent on this? And I ask, like, let's say maybe, they get the repairs done, this deal is still in place, and they're still collecting all that revenue or withholding that tax revenue, that income tax revenue. Where does that money go? Or the Diamondbacks, once they get their repairs done, are they at liberty to spend that money how they see fit?
No, this is only for upgrades, improvements, to the stadium. So if that happened, I mean, this is the law. The legislature years later could look at that. But then again, there's $500 million worth of repairs and upgrades that need to be made. The team is going to be participating to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars as well to try maybe to front load this as well. Maybe, there's some loans with the guaranteed money that's coming in, but they're going to be putting in, like they have over the past few years, their own money.
And do you think this is going to be popular? And I only say that because we've seen what the appetite is for the public for spending anything that looks like taxpayer dollars to put it on public sports stadiums. There's an attitude out there that, hey, these are billion-dollar owners. Why do I have to put up money to pay for their stadiums?
I understand that concern, Dennis, but the fact is that's if you're just going with a 10-second soundbite or a headline talking about it. This is a publicly owned stadium. Yeah. Any other
It's a publicly owned stadium, but like they're making money off that public asset in a way that you can't or I can't.
But we wouldn't let any other thing. And look, the Diamondbacks have always told me and everyone they're not going anywhere. But as a businessman, I understand that if you're constantly throwing money to upgrade an asset that you don't own, there becomes a breaking point. They've never said that, but to me, that's just common sense. The amount of economic development and revenue outside that envelope is immense. We're talking about the 3 deadest months of the year where nothing's going on downtown. Now they're coming to baseball games, 30, 35,000 people, and they're pouring out of there and going to the restaurants and bars and everything in downtown. And we really just can't become a two-sport state. We've already lost the Coyotes.
Well, you just said the Diamondbacks said they're not going anywhere. Do you take them at their word, or do you think they could go someplace else so they don't get the deal they want?
I do believe they're staying here, but at the same time, that doesn't mean you don't come up with what I think is a common sense thing to assure that.
Yeah.
That has no added taxes to the taxpayer.
And let me ask you the question a bit differently, I guess. What do you say to people who then, I think some people in committee were talking about this, looking at this as corporate welfare. You're a businessman. I know that. You've been a successful businessman. You don't get any help from the government to help your businesses run. Why should the Diamondbacks get help with their business?
I think it's a little different. I mean, I'll compare it to the Intel bill that I ran years ago and juxtaposed together with the TMC bill. They were having to build water plants that the city of Chandler owned. They're doing a $12 billion investment. They have to build a water plant. We said, no, the construction sales tax that wouldn't exist unless you were expanding anyway can be used to build that water plant that you don't own. This is somewhat the same thing where the economic development, the civic pride that comes from this team spins off hotel rooms and everything else out there. It's a different animal, and they don't own the stadium themselves. The people do.
And what the politics of this? How confident are you that you can get this through? Because obviously, again, we have seen here, and we've seen at the polls that the public's attitude towards these things, towards giving taxpayer money or benefits or subsidies in any form, isn't popular. I mean, we just saw that with the hockey team in Tempe. How's the politics at the legislature look? I mean, I did see it's a bipartisan bill, so you did get Democrats on board, but there could be some, some obstacles that come up.
Yeah, there is with any bill. I mean, any bill sometimes I think is different bills. This is going to be a slam dunk, and it's the toughest bill you run. Yeah. But, I think it's the right plan, and we're reaching out to everyone. And if you saw the hearing, you saw that we're taking everybody's input. We don't shut anybody down. And I think this is the best plan for this public asset to keep it here for years to come and hopefully have another World Series title very soon. And there was Kevin McCarthy, who runs the Arizona Tax Research Association, a real expert on taxes, and he told you to be careful and to get comfortable with who you're going to say no to, because he worries that if this passes, if this goes into law, you're setting a real terrible precedent that other businesses will be in line looking for the same deal that the Diamondbacks got. Worked with Kevin for a long time, a lot of respect for him. Again, I think it's different. I think when you get into conversations like this, you understand that this isn't the same exact thing. This is an asset that already exists, and we need to make sure it continues. All right, Jeff Weniger, thank you very much for stopping by here. And coming up next, I'll be bringing in our panel to talk about all of this week's major headlines, including yet another state lawmaker claiming legislative immunity to try to get out of a traffic ticket. That's next on Politics Unplugged. Welcome back to Politics Unplugged. State Senator Mark Finchem was pulled over for speeding in Prescott about 2 weeks ago. He was accused of driving 48 miles per hour in a 30-mile-per-hour zone. Finchem showed the officer his state Senate ID. The officer wrote Finchem a ticket anyway, and here is how Mr. Finchem reacted.
I'll take it up with Legislative Council.
Okay, you're more than welcome to. Have a good evening.
2 days later, Finchem sent a letter to the Prescott police chief asking that the ticket be voided and stricken from the record. The citation was dropped without prejudice, meaning that the city can come back and refile after the legislative session is over, because that is when the legislative immunity ends. So let's bring in our panel to talk about this. Got Democratic political consultant Tony Connie and Marcus Dellartino, the Republican, here. Let's start with you, Tony. Your thoughts when you see another lawmaker, because there's a history of this.
Oh, yeah.
Asking for legislative immunity, special treatment on something like a speeding ticket.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. This isn't why legislative immunity exists. If you speed, if you break the law and you get a ticket, you should have to pay your ticket, period. I mean, I guess maybe he's thinking if they don't do this, he'll get a pardon from Trump or something. I don't understand the idea that you just don't have to follow the law. Yeah. It doesn't make sense. Did he not get to go to session because of this ticket? Was he prevented from voting on anything because of this ticket? No, he just doesn't want to pay. That's it.
And Mark, this is nothing new. I mean, we have seen this. There's a rich history of this. And I will say Democrats have also done this, too, to try to invoke legislative immunity to get out of trouble. It got to a point where in 2019, Doug Ducey, then Republican governor, actually called for legislative immunity to be abolished. TJ Shope ran that bill, but that bill never even got a hearing. Why?
Big shocker. I mean,
lawmakers don't want to give up their special privileges.
If I had the legislative immunity, I wouldn't want to lose it either. But I think we're at a different time, and these stories are coming faster and faster, and with more repetitivity.
Say that again.
Anyway,
say that 3 times.
Anyway, the point being, I think that we are on. I think by Monday morning you are going to have a bill be filed to address this. It'll be a constitutional amendment. The voters are going to have to vote on it. I suspect the voters are in favor of getting rid of this legislative immunity. I think it'll be tailored to these specific situations on traffic. Remember, the original concept, which was happening in the southern states, was legislators were being arrested or detained on the way to the Capitol to vote on bills. And so other states adopted this legislative immunity into their constitutions. We just have been maybe abusing it a little bit more than we probably should.
And let's switch topics. Let's talk a little bit, Tony, about the baseball stadium, the bill to keep the Diamondbacks in downtown. You think this is going to go over well with the public?
No, I don't. I think that there's a long history of voters not wanting to do any sort of investment in, whether you call it a public asset or not, the names that are on the building, that's the Diamondbacks. The offices that are in the building, it's the Diamondbacks. There's not Maricopa County Public Works working in there. That is an office that's put together. That's where the Diamondbacks are. And I think people like the team, but I don't think necessarily they're going to be in favor of this. I think if there was a vote of the people, it would fail, which is why it's there. The legislation is probably the only way to get this thing approved.
Yeah, because we got a Super Bowl this weekend, and one of the teams in that, the Kansas City Chiefs, they're wanting a new stadium, and the public support out there is none for that. I mean, it seems like the public appetite for public money going to these stadiums, there is none anymore. What do you think happens to the legislature?
Well, I think this is going to pass, number one. Number two is when you take those, there are specific examples in specific localities of where public participation is working, number one. Number two is this is a different circumstances in that this stadium is already built, number one. And so we're talking about maintaining that asset. Two, to Rep. Winiger's point, the owner's putting in roughly $250 million of his own money to match what the county is putting in, which the county is really going to be, the fans of baseball are really the ones who are going to be paying this, because that's where the spending has happened within that 25 acres of the stadium district. So, I think there will be some no votes, but, there were Democrats who were voting for this. They understand the importance of that kind of asset, whether it's the Suns or the D-backs or whatever in downtown.
I mean, I think there's one of the things I'm reacting to is the fact the Diamondbacks owner is saying he's going to put money into this. He also, the Kendrick family has spent money for years against any sort of, through the Arizona Free Enterprise Club or whatever, to get government to stop giving money to businesses. But all of a sudden, when it comes to his business, he wants his money. And one thing you'll notice, the Arizona Free Enterprise Club, who normally is very outspoken on these issues, pretty quiet about this. And so, because they're a top donor to Kendrick, I think that there's another thing I want to point out is it's not just sales tax, it's the income tax on the players, which I think includes the players from other stadiums and other teams that come in and play. I just think that if the public knows more about this, they're just not going to be in favor of it.
All right.
I don't think the public's going to be afraid to tax players. I can tell you that much.
No, I think they would probably like that money to go to the public and to go to public services rather than just to the teams.
They're not receiving that out-of-town money yet. Currently, so this would be an addition.
Well, let's wrap up on this. Let's move from baseball to protests. We saw a lot of protests this past week. Immigration protests. Folks are not unhappy, angry about the current White House's policies on deportations and immigration in general. We showed a lot of those protests on our air this past week, and some of the response we got from people watching. They were saying, why are there so many Mexican flags down there? I mean, are they getting in the way of their own message? We saw, some cop cars being smashed and one being stolen in Glendale. The other, are they getting in the way of their own message?
Yeah, I think the cop car stuff's not good. I think I can say that. But look,
don't go too far out on a limb.
These protests, I'll tell you, these are happening organically. Normally, the organization they're putting it together. These are organic protests that are happening from people, whether it's a car club or whatever. And I think part of the reason why people are waving the Mexican flag is because they believe they're being targeted because they're Mexican.
Yes.
But their message.
I understand. I'm just saying, but that's the reason why they're out there.
Again, we're going to have to end it right there.
God,
I am so sorry about that. Next week, Marcus, you can continue that thought. That is all the time we have. Be sure to join us next week for more Politics Unplugged.